Pursuant to Internal Revenue Service guidance, be advised that any federal tax advice contained in this program is not intended to be used, and it cannot be used by any person or entity for the purpose of avoiding any tax penalties that may be imposed by the Internal Revenue Service or any other U.S. federal taxing authority or agency, or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any transaction or matter addressed in this show. The opinions expressed by the host and the guests are their own and may not be used as authoritative advice. Any use of this material without the written consent of the host is strictly prohibited.
You're listening to the IRS Radio Hour with your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, on AM 560, The Answer. Tune in every week at 5 for an informative discussion about IRS obligations, credit card debt, mortgage default, collection activity, and how to resolve these legal issues using tax resolution, debt settlement, mortgage loan modification, foreclosure defense, and bankruptcy. Your host is Stephen Leahy, and the principal at Open Tax Resolutions and the Law Office of Stephen Leahy, PC. Stephen is the author of Deal With Your IRS Problems Today. IRS and debt issues are serious, but there is help. There are resolutions. So get ready and take notes during the IRS Radio Hour. And now, here's your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy.
Hello, Chicago, and welcome to the IRS Radio Hour. This is our first show, and I want to thank you all for listening. Before we get started, I want to begin by thanking WIND for the opportunity to answer any questions or help anybody else out there. My name is Stephen Leahy, as you may have guessed, and I am an IRS attorney. I help people who have financial problems, mostly IRS problems, but I help people with other problems also. I help people with credit card debt and foreclosure defense and any other kind of legal issues out there. So if you have a question and you want it answered, feel free to drop me an email, and you can email me at questions@irsradiohour.com. Or you can call my office, and my office telephone number is 312-664-6649. Again, that's 312-664-6649. If you have any legal questions, be happy to answer them. That's I want to introduce my co-host here. His name is Jim Leahy.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. We're here to answer questions for people, and let's get started right away. Steve, the first thing is tax day was just a few weeks ago. Do you have anything to tell people who might be behind, have not filed their taxes? Maybe that they're afraid to file, haven't filed in a couple of years. Maybe they're a little late. What would you tell them to do?
Well, that's a good question, Jim. I want to tell you that I've had a lot of people in the last couple of weeks come to see me who have filed a extension. And this happens to be a common thing, in that people will file an extension every year and never file their tax return. An extension really doesn't do anything. It doesn't really help you. And so my advice to people always is file your tax return on time. That's always the biggest thing.
Okay, well, now we're 2 weeks afterwards and say I haven't filed. Mm-hmm. Now, I did it. Does it cost money to file an extension when you go to the IRS? Does the IRS expect a check? What does the IRS expect from you to do if you're filing late?
Well, if you file late, just because you file an extension, that doesn't mean you don't have to pay your taxes on time. So a lot of people will file an extension thinking, well, that will delay the time for me to pay my taxes, and actually it doesn't. The IRS expects you with the extension to send them a check of what do you think you owe them. Even though you don't know exactly how much it is, they want the money. They want you to send them a check and pay your taxes on time. If you don't pay the taxes on time, then you'll get hit with a penalty. Then you'll get two penalties, perhaps, the late filing and then the late payment.
So if I need to go right now, what you're saying is the sooner the better. These problems won't go away, and the problem, the thing I should be worried about if I have not filed would be to file as soon as possible and start to go after this, whether it's a year or 2 years. How long back do you have to go? Say,
well, that really depends on the situation. I've had some clients who haven't filed in 20 years, and they come to see me, and first thing we want
to do. Are they in prison?
Not yet. That's something we should also talk about is that because people always say, well, I don't file my taxes because I don't have the money to pay them. And so I don't file the return because I don't have the money to pay the tax. And so I want to wait till I have the money to pay the tax before I file the return. And that's just the wrong thing to do. And the reason why that is, and I tell people this all the time, is that it's not a crime to owe the IRS money. A lot of people owe the IRS money, but it is a crime not to file your tax returns on time. Matter of fact, you can get a year for every tax return that's not filed.
So they really don't have a heart, is what you're saying. They won't listen to stories. You have to file.
The IRS doesn't have a heart? That's news to me, Jim.
Well, let's see. You heard the introduction coming into the show. So we have even people are. You shouldn't be afraid of the IRS, but you should not think that they're on your side.
Well, you should. I always tell people, don't call the IRS. If you owe the IRS money or if you're behind, you shouldn't be contacting the IRS by yourself because they will trap you. And I always tell people that there's two types of IRS agents that I have found, or what they call them, revenue officers. There's two types I found. One could be like Mother Teresa. They seem like they want to help you. And you open up to them and tell them all your secrets. And then...
But they can use it against you? Is that what you're saying?
Then they will use it against you. That's exactly what I'm saying. But then the second type is like Attila the Hun. Okay, and Attila the Hun will browbeat you and treat you very badly to get information from you.
But doesn't the IRS work for us? Aren't they a government agency working for us?
Oh, Jim, you're so naive.
Yes, I am. Enlighten me.
That's not the way it works. Again, even those that come across as Mother Teresa are really Attila the Hun, I think. I think they just found a better way to get information from you. And because you think they're trying to help you, you will open up and tell them things. And they're writing it all down. So you can't go back later and say, I know I told you that, but that wasn't really true. So now I'm going to change that.
So what we should be learning from you is never go in without legal protection. Never talk to the IRS or government without legal protection.
Right.
And let's see, if you're saying lawyers are better than IRS agents, then IRS agents are very low down the totem. And I don't mean that. That's really not my last name, IRS agents, so don't worry about it.
Actually, I have to say that I have a lot of good friends who are lawyers, and I like them. But we have a bad rap. I say we because I am an attorney, as you well know, and I help people all the time.
I heard I'm from the government and I help people.
But I am not from the government. I protect people from the government. That's what I do.
That's where I wanted to get to this. That's what this show is all about. About coming to him for protection. You never go to the government. Never trust your freedoms and your money without having somebody standing on your side. And I think that's what I've learned from Steve here. And I think that what we have to do is inform people that there are ways out of the problems that you're in, but you have to start going at it now. Waiting does nothing but cause trouble. Believe me, I know.
That's very good advice, Jim. In that, and that I just, matter of fact, I had a client just recently who said, well, as I mentioned earlier, the people won't file their returns because they owe money, and when people come to see me, the first thing we want to do is tell them, hey, you got to get in compliance, and compliance means filing your returns, getting those filed, and then worrying about all the back taxes later. And she thought, well, that's just opposite what I thought. I thought I'd have to pay my earliest first and then worry about the future taxes. And actually what you want to do is get in compliance today, stay in compliance, and then you can fix the problem that's already created. You don't want to keep going on and have the problem snowball. So the earlier you can get to the problem, get in compliance with the IRS, the easier your problem is going to be to resolve.
So what you're saying is that if you have plumbing problems, you don't call a carpenter. So if you have tax problems, it's good to find an attorney who focuses just on that. Even if you have another attorney, the best thing to do is to find it's almost like a doctor, isn't it?
It could be like a doctor, but I look at myself a little bit different than that, in that I help people who have I look at myself as a financial recovery consultant almost, in that I help people with taxes. That's the majority of my clients are IRS problems, but I help people with other problems, other financial problems. What I've learned is that people who have IRS problems oftentimes have other problems. So if you're not paying the IRS, there's a very good chance you're not paying your mortgage or you can't pay your credit card debt, and they're coming after you also. And so one of the things that we want to do is take a look at the overall picture, not just the IRS problem, but your overall situation, and try to get you back on track with all of your. Because if I just solve your IRS problem and you still have you lose your home to foreclosure, well, that's not going to be much help for you. So in the end, you want to be able to tackle all these problems.
So this is a wide-ranging show that you're going to be offering, and wide ranges of opinions. And so it's not just taxes. We're going to talk about a lot of things on this show, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about IRS issues, but we're also going to talk about foreclosure issues, and we're going to talk about credit card debt. We're going to talk about collections. And you can visit my website at chicagotaxteam.com, and you'll get some more information about that.
Or you can call 312-664-6649.
Welcome back to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy. Stephen has helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and he wants to help you and your family. There are resolutions, and you will hear about all those resolutions during today's informative discussion on the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
Welcome back, and welcome to the IRS Radio Hour. Remember, we're here every Sunday evening at 5 o'clock, or every Sunday afternoon. That's a tough one, Jim. Was it afternoon or evening, 5 o'clock?
It depends on if it's winter or summer.
I guess that's the.
In the winter, it's dark.
A very good answer. My name is Stephen Leahy. I'm an attorney here in Chicago, and I help people with IRS problems.
And my name is Jim Leahy, and I'm not an attorney here in Chicago, but I have questions. Well, that's what we're doing here.
That's true. And if you have questions, what I'd like you to do is shoot me an email. You can email me at questions@irsradiohour.com.
Is there any other way that they can contact you?
Well, they can call me too, Jim, and they can call me at 312-664-6649, or they can visit my website at chicagotaxteam.com. Lots of answers.
Do you have a Facebook page?
I do have a Facebook page.
And what would that be?
My Facebook page is Facebook.com/OPEM-TAX.
And how would you spell that?
OPEM is OPEM, M as in Mary.
And what does that mean?
OPEM is a Latin word that means help.
Help.
That's right. Especially help. That's right.
Oh, well, okay.
That's on my website. And if you go to chicagotaxteam.com, there's a definition of what OPEM means.
Well, we learn something new every day. And that's what this show is all about. Learning things about financial help, not being afraid to admit. The first step to this, Steve, is to admit you have trouble. And then the second thing is to find somebody to help you out.
That's right. And
now, why did you get involved in this?
Well, I have been helping people with IRS problems for some time now. And I think I began right out of law school. And what drives me, what makes me want to get out of bed every morning is that I help people resolve their financial problems. So I have some great testimonials from clients. I've been lucky enough to have clients who've resolved their financial problems and their IRS problems and have said really nice things about me. And I think I do encourage people to
say nice things about you.
Well, I always encourage that too, Jim. But what I do encourage people to do is anytime you're going to talk to a lawyer or anything, do some research. Whether it's me or anybody else, always research them. Find out what other people have said about them. Find out what the Better Business Bureau is saying about them, because I think it's important that if other people have liked them or have some other concern, maybe you'll have that same concern.
Well, since this is our initial show, and and we're going to try to go in the directions that the listeners would like, we should be looking into. Do you think that we'll go into maybe stories about the IRS? Should we ask people who are being? I've read a lot, especially this last couple of years, about people who are being audited and have never been audited before in their lives and never heard. But all of a sudden, many people are just being audited, and some people are saying it's Could be political, and I'm not saying it is. I'm just reading off the headlines. These are the headlines today.
They are the headlines today, and I read it every day. I think that I always find it ironic because when people have IRS problems, one of the first things we have to do is give a lot of documents to the IRS, and they don't wait. They want them tomorrow. They wanted them yesterday, and so it's kind of ironic now when Congress starts asking the IRS for documents and they're putting them up. We can't help you. We won't be able to get those documents for some years from now. And unfortunately, you don't have that luxury. You have to provide those documents and you have to do it right away. And you have to prove your situation to the IRS. They won't take your word for it, Jim.
They won't.
They won't.
Well, that just doesn't seem right. We have to take theirs. But what I'm saying is, and then what we'd like to know is, at Chicago IRS Radio or the IRS Radio Hour.com, if people who are being audited say it's the first time you're surprised, drop us a line. We'd like to see how many people are out there because I do in our travels. We've been finding people, political reasons, other reasons, people in tea parties, people in who love, and we'd like to see if that's just if it's just talk or if it's true. I'd like to, some people, misery loves company, as they say. So
there's nothing more miserable than being audited by the IRS. Let me tell you that.
Yes, I know.
And it can be anecdotal in that people say, well, I've been audited, and so there must be some nefarious reason why I'm being audited. And I don't think we have enough to put that together. But I agree that if we could gather more information from people and they can just send us something at questions at irsradiohour.com, we can kind of put it together and try to see if there is a pattern.
Or even on Facebook. That would be a way that would be something that we could do weeks. We'll keep our listeners up to date on if we are getting a lot or if we're not getting a lot. Mm-hmm. And there's other things we'd like to do. We'd like to be able to, if there are questions, we'd like to bring up the history of some of these laws, or as you said, what we saw the other day. Wasn't that saying that I believe that they say that they've reversed their decision on going after children of family.
That's right. This was in the news recently that the Social Security Administration and other federal agencies were taxing, for lack of a better term, the wages or the tax refund of individuals for 30 years of their parents. 30 years ago, their parents had some income that the federal government decided was not right, and then they went after their children 30 years later and took their money. Now they've reversed that decision. But there was a great article recently by George Will who talks about this, that the IRS might decide just from your pattern of putting money in the bank that you're up to nefarious reasons and start taking your money for no reason whatsoever other than the pattern that you're putting money in the bank. So, for instance, I'm going to the bank a lot and I'm putting in $9,000, $8,000. There's a rule that says the bank has to report anybody who puts in $10,000 or more. So if you have a pattern of putting in money in the bank at $9,000 increments, your bank might turn around and tell the IRS, and the IRS might come after you and take your money without even letting you know. And then you have to prove that money was not from a criminal enterprise.
I thought we lived in America, Steve. I thought we lived in America.
I thought we did too, Jim, but I don't know about a free society that would come up with the IRS. I think that has
what kind of free people would invent this kind of monster?
That's a very good question. I don't think it was a monster when they invented it, but it sure has turned into a monster, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. And that's another thing about this show. We want people to understand you have rights. You have rights, and you should stand up for them. And the best way to do it is with an attorney, because as Steve pointed out, you're not playing around when you're going with the IRS. The IRS they don't want to be liked. They don't care if you like them. They don't care anything about you. What they care about is getting money from you, and as much money as they can. And
that's absolutely right. And one of the things what you have to do, as I mentioned at the beginning here, is you have to prove how much money you have. And I always tell people, I don't have the money. I owe the IRS so much money. There's no way I can pay it back. Well, there are programs out there with the IRS that if you can show them that you don't have the money to pay them, that you don't have to pay them. They'll leave you alone for some time.
Won't they take one of your children?
They will not take your children if you can prove, but first you have to prove that you don't have any money.
But will they give me the deduction? That's what I care about.
They will give you the deduction. Well, this is important. This is something that they call currently not collectible status. And so if you owe the IRS money, and again, one reason why people don't file their tax returns is because they're afraid because they owe the IRS money and they don't have the money to pay them. So they're afraid to file their returns. And but if you don't have the money to pay the IRS and you can prove it, then the IRS will put you in this status called currently not collectible. And this currently not collectible status will mean that the IRS will leave you alone. That means they won't levy your bank account. They won't garnish your wages. They won't appear at your house and ask you questions. They won't appear at your job. And this is what the IRS does for collection activity.
Will they continue to put interest on the payment?
The answer is yes, they will. It'll be interest upon interest. But, sometimes I can't help people. What I tell people, sometimes I can't change what you owe the IRS, but sometimes I can change what you pay the IRS.
That is important.
Another thing that people don't realize is that there is a statute of limitations on how long the IRS can collect a debt against you. And but here's another thing. If you don't file your tax returns, then that statute of limitations never really starts, and so it can go on perpetually. And so that's another reason why it's so important to file your income tax returns on time. And if they're not on time, do it as soon as possible.
It seems to me that this is kind of all set up in their favor.
You would think they wrote the rules, wouldn't you?
Well, I say that any questions that you have, you should go to the IRSRadioHour.com.
And we'll be right back after these words.
You're listening to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy on AM 560, The Answer. Attorney Stephen Leahy brings his passion and expertise to your radio each and every week during the IRS Radio Hour. Tune in, take notes, and be educated. Learn your options resolving financial obstacles that face so many. And now, back to the IRS Radio Hour with your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
And welcome back. Stephen Leahy here at WIND, The Answer. I want to thank WIND again for the opportunity to talk to all of you and give you an opportunity to ask me questions, because I know that there's a lot of important questions that you have, whether you're driving around in your car or you're listening at home or maybe on the internet, and you're facing some of these problems with the IRS or other debt issues. I want you to know that you can always contact me. I'm always happy to talk to people and to help them any way that I can. And you can reach me again. You can send me an email at questions@irsradiohour.com.
Or is there a phone number that they can contact you at?
You can call my office, and my office number is 312-664-6649. You can also find some answers on our website. It's ChicagoTaxTeam.com.
And a Facebook page.
We have a Facebook page. It's Facebook/Opum Tax. So visit us on Facebook and like us. We need likes. We need a lot of likes.
Sometimes it seems like we're being a little bit, we're laughing and it's our first show. But what we want people to understand is that you're not alone out there. A lot of people have these same problems, and, putting them off is not the answer. And what Steve wants, I believe, what he would like you to understand is that there is somebody who you can talk to and you can get it off. You can get it off your chest, and believe me, you'll feel good. You'll feel much better once you start resolving the problem.
Well, that's one of the first things when people come to visit me in my office, and I have a lot of tears, believe it or not, and they come in and talk to me. People with their wife or their significant other, and we talk about their problems, and they start letting it all out, and they start crying. And almost all my clients, and this is one of my goals, is when they leave my office, they're telling, I feel so much better. There is an answer, and I never thought that there was an answer. I thought I've been staying up at night for several years. And, if you haven't filed your taxes in 5 years, for 5 years, you haven't been able to sleep very well, at least a lot of the time. And you're always worried about whether the IRS is going to knock on your door or they're going to start sending you certified letters. And let me tell you, certified letters are important. And how many people come to my office and they have a stack of mail from the IRS and they never open it up? You have to open up the letters. You don't know what they're going to do to you unless you read it. Okay, so a lot of times they'll send what they call a intent to levy notice. And this intent to levy notice, you have 30 days to file an appeal. And if you don't file the appeal, they'll start taking things from you. So you always answer, open up the IRS mail.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, it's a tough lesson to learn.
Yes, it is. But I'm not alone. And I feel much better knowing that. Misery loves company, as they say.
Well, misery might love company, but you also want to get out of the misery.
Yes.
Okay. You want to find a way out of it, and there is a way out.
That's where we're going.
Look,
it's very difficult because even Donald Rumsfeld last week, if I remember correctly, even Donald Rumsfeld couldn't wrote down that here's a guy who was the chief of staff, was the head of the secretary of the military, chief of staff to the president of the United States, and said he has no idea if his taxes are right.
Well, I don't think the IRS even knows if their taxes are right. As an attorney, I know what the rules and the regulations are. But I think a lot of the revenue officers that I talk to on the phone, they have no idea what the rules and regulations are. I think sometimes they make it up as they go along. And because nobody questions them on it, they think they have this unbridled authority to just dictate what people are going to pay. And there are rules and regulations, even to the IRS, but you have to keep their feet to the fire and make sure that you know what those rules are. When you start debating the IRS by yourself, you have no background. And if they tell you this is what it is, this is how much you must pay, you don't have a background to argue with them. But there is rules and regulations, and that's why you need a professional to help you.
So that is the most important thing. You have to have representation, and you have to have somebody who's standing up for your rights, and which is what this is really all about: is people taking their own rights into their own hands and making sure that the government doesn't dictate to them what's in their best interest, or because the government is not on your side.
I think you're absolutely right, and a lot of people. You have a CPA or some other, they have what they call enrolled agents that do this kind of work too. They'll help with the IRS, but they don't have the authority that an attorney has. An attorney is an advocate. And also another important distinction is when you talk to an attorney, you have an attorney-client relationship, and there's a privilege there. The attorney doesn't have to tell the IRS what you told them. They don't have to tell anybody else what you told them. But if I'm talking to an accountant, if I'm talking to an enrolled agent, I don't have that special relationship. And without that special relationship, they have to tell the IRS everything that you've told them.
So what we're saying is you have to use every advantage you can find. Absolutely. And the way to do that is to find somebody who will advocate for you.
Absolutely. Now, I want you all to remember that we're here every Sunday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So you should take time and come visit us.
I'm here until Bears start on Sunday at 5 in the morning.
That's right.
You'll have to find somebody else.
Call us at 312-664-6649. And we'll be on the other side, and we'll talk a little bit more about fake IRS people.
Welcome back to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy. Stephen has helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and he wants to help you and your family. There are resolutions, and you will hear about all those resolutions during today's informative discussion on the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
Okay, we're back. We're going to talk about fake IRS agents.
Oh, I don't follow you. What is that all about?
Well, it's funny because I've had not only IRS people, but I've had a lot of clients that call and say, "Hey, I was contacted by a federal agency, and they told me if I send them money, they'll leave me alone. Otherwise, they're going to put me in jail. Is that right?" And I have to stop them and say, "Wait a minute, that's not the way the IRS works."
But they will throw you in jail, but these aren't the right ones. You're talking about somebody else.
That's right, because there are a lot.
Now, let me ask you, where would is there a way for people to collect this information that the IRS is coming after you? Is that how they find out? Or
Exactly, because when the IRS files a lien against you, that's public information. And so people know, these nefarious people know that you have an IRS problem. And so they'll call you and they'll say, Agent Jones wants to talk to you. And here's a number. You call Agent Jones by 3 o'clock this afternoon. Otherwise, there's going to be some bad problems. And I've had clients say, well, I have a lawyer. Well, don't tell your lawyer about this. This is important stuff. And so when you call, because I've had the clients call me back, and I've made the phone call, and the first thing they say is IRS. They answer the phone, IRS. And just as a hint, that's not the way the IRS answers the phone. Hey, IRS, what's your Social Security number? So now they're going to know your name and your Social Security number. You just gave it to somebody.
That's not good?
That's never good, Jim. And again, so sometimes it's the IRS. Sometimes it's I had someone told me that it was a federal agency that they had purchased some diet pills from overseas, and it was illegal. And they should go turn themselves into their local police department, or they can send $3,500 for the fine. And so people they're afraid. They're calling. They're telling me, hey, I've got to go to jail, or I got to pay them. I'm just going to go give them $3,500. Not a good idea. Okay, that's not the way the federal government works. That's not the way any police department works. And whenever you're having problems, criminal, IRS, again, always get help. Talk to somebody before you send any money.
That would be an attorney.
Absolutely an attorney, because the attorney, again, we were talking about this earlier about the attorney-client privilege, and that's an important privilege, and it's not something to be discounted.
It's your constitutional right.
Absolutely, it's your
to have representation.
That's right. And later, as the show progresses, we're going to have a segment on the Constitution, because I think it's important that we review what our constitutional rights are and how to protect ourselves. And remember, the Constitution sometimes helps us protect ourselves from our own government, and our own government being the IRS, because they're the biggest, baddest collection agency out there, and they, again, run roughshod over a lot of people.
As long as you allow them to.
Absolutely.
So,
right.
And I think you're right. I think it's time where people start looking up at their rights and seeing that now that we have all this NSA stuff and people listening to your phones, or what's in front of the Supreme Court this week, and can they take your phone and look into your all your stuff that's on your smartphones?
That's right.
It's scary. I'm thinking about what's happening, how fast this could go.
And if the IRS starts using these powers against you and looking at your financial records without your permission or without your even knowledge, and then they start taking things from you, and you had no idea that they even were looking at you. One of the things that we do at our office is when people hire us is we go out, and one of the first things we do is we file a Freedom of Information Act request, because we want to know all the things that the IRS knows about you. And you'd be surprised of the documents and the information that they have about you stashed away at the IRS office.
You can do that?
Absolutely. It's called the Freedom of Information Act. And actually, this is what gets a lot of the hide that they're trying to hide, like the emails from the White House, for instance.
The Benghazi thing.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And how do they get that? The Judicial Watch issued a Freedom of Information Act request, and the White House, even the White House, has to come up and give it, because that's what the law says. The same thing with the IRS. If you send them a Freedom of Information Act request, they have to give you the information that they have. Because you want to be consistent. You don't want to say something that that the IRS has documents that says one thing, and you don't remember because it's been some time, and you say another thing. So you always want to be consistent.
Well, as we talked about the Donald Rumsfeld article, it's impossible for anybody to know every one of these rules. It's impossible. Anybody's taxes they could take tomorrow and say that this is wrong.
I think that's basically correct in that, because the rules are so gray. And I love that. I love Donald Rumsfeld's letter, because what he's he has to sign the return, as all of us do, under penalty of perjury. And so he's saying, hey, I'm signing it under penalty of perjury, but I really don't know if it's right or not. I hired a great CPA. I tried to be open and honest. I tried to do all the right things, but I really don't know if it's right or not.
And I don't think that the IRS, and like as you said said before, the IRS can't even tell you if it's right or not.
That's right, and it really depends on who the auditor is and who the revenue agent is and what the rules are.
See, now this would be another thing we should get into is how we can get this to change as people, as free citizens of the United States of America, and that would be a flat tax. But I don't think that we should.
Now you're just making a fool out of yourself, Jim.
No, I knew that. I meant a pretty thick flat tax, but.
Okay, so I want to thank you all. Now remember, ChicagoTaxTeam.com has lots of answers there. They'll answer your questions. You can give me a call on my phone. It's 312-664-6649.
What's the website?
Or you can send me an email at questions@irsradiohour.com.
You're listening to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy on AM 560, The Answer. Attorney Stephen Leahy brings his passion and expertise to your radio each and every week during the IRS Radio Hour. Tune in, take notes, and be educated. Learn your options resolving financial obstacles that face so many. And now, back to the IRS Radio Hour with your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
This is the IRS Radio Hour with Stephen Leahy, and you could reach me at my office always. You have a legal question, you have something about IRS questions or any debt-related issue or really any legal issue, feel free to give me a call at my office, and my number is 312-664-6649. You can shoot me an email at questions@irsradiohour.com. Or you can visit my website at ChicagoTaxTeam.com. So any of those ways to reach me, always happy to answer any questions that you might have. It's a big part of my job is reaching out and answering questions. And a lot of times it doesn't come to anything. And a lot of times people are worried about things that they shouldn't be worried about. And so I'm always happy to give you that information.
Well, Steve, since this is our first show, I think I want to ask you, what is it that you envisioned? Why should people come back every week?
Well, I started the show, and I thought because I have a lot of I get a lot of people who call me and ask me questions, and I thought this was a great forum for me to answer questions for people that would not otherwise know that there was somebody out there that can answer. And so I'm here, and I want to answer your questions. And that's why we started the show, because there's so many people out there that have, especially in this day and age, a lot of people have debt issues. If you don't have debt issues, then you probably know somebody who does. And so I'd encourage them, tune in. We're here on Sunday evenings on AM 560, The Answer. And we're going to be here every Sunday evening
at 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So come, make a note of it. Tell your friends. If anybody you know has financial problems, tell them that we're here. We're here to answer their questions.
You don't necessarily have to have financial problems. We're going to try to go into some history, some, like we said, constitutional stuff. You're right, the rights that you have. People who are trying to take these rights away from you. We want to bring up things that will warn us about upcoming legislation that maybe that you wouldn't know about. So
well, that's right. We want to do more than just answer debt problems. What I'd be interested in is if a listeners out there has any advice, or what are you interested in? We want to talk about it. And I know a lot of good attorneys out there, and as I mentioned, they're not all bad. There's a lot of good attorneys out there, and if I don't have the answer, I probably know somebody who does have the answer, and I'd like to invite them maybe in to see to answer your questions. And if you have a special, we can have a special segment, for instance, to have attorneys from different with different practices come in and answer your questions.
If that's what people are interested in,
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably a good thing that we're on 560, The Answer.
That's right, because we have the answer.
Yes, that's what we're looking for.
It makes sense, and but it's important. Again, that if you have a question, to contact us and send a question. If you have some recommendation of what we should be talking about, and we're not, then send that to me at questions@irsradiohour.com. IRSradiohour.com.
And if you have any a legal question, even if you're afraid to, just it's worth it for us to leave it for you, and then we'll answer it.
Absolutely. And again, people sometimes are afraid they don't know who to reach out to, and that's why we're here. So we're here to give you answers.
That's right. And we're also here to let you know that you're not by yourself, that you don't have to go through these things all on your own, and that you have rights. And
Absolutely.
it's important that you're able to stand up for your rights, and that's part of being an American citizen.
Before we go here today, I want to make sure that people remember that we're here on Sunday evenings, every Sunday evening on AM 560 The Answer. And I want to thank Debbie, and I want to thank Jim, and I want to thank Chad, and I want to thank everybody else here at the station for making this possible for me. And don't forget, next week, visit us. We're here every Sunday evening.
560.